Welcome to another in our series of Kehillat Israel podcasts. This is a recording of Rabbi Amy Bernstein's weekly Friday morning Torah study.
I was very unhappy to not be with you last week. Very unhappy. As some of you know, it's one of my favorite parts of Torah, the birth of Moshe. The whole story of these women who make possible essentially the redemption from Egypt. These women who working together and crossing all kinds of boundaries and crossing what you'd expect and taking the other that's supposed to be demonized, right, as one's own. All of these ways that the women of the Exodus, beginning of Exodus narrative, really put the crack at the foundation of the empire of evil in our story. So I was very sad not to study that with you last week.
Where are they now? Where are those women now?
Right. We have to be those women now, and those men. But we're going to be now in the second part of the beginning of the Exodus narrative. Things move pretty quickly, right? We got the birth of Moshe, and then boom, like a few pages later, he's in Midian, he's married Zipporah, he's hanging out with Yitro, and he's been commissioned, right, by God to go to Pharaoh and to tell Pharaoh to let the Israelites go. And so we're at the very beginning of that narrative, the whole plague narrative. This is where it begins. So listen for already the introduction of some of the themes, some of the language, some of the imagery that's going to be used throughout the plague narrative, all the way through till Beshalach, when the Israelites actually leave Egypt. So last year I was pretty tight with Moshe.
Yes.
I was hanging pretty tight. I was pretty close with Moshe last year. So we'll see what happens this year and how it goes. So this is actually my first encounter with Moshe this year with y'all. All right, so we're in Parshat Vaera. So what happened last week? Moshe was born. Moshe was commissioned. Where was he commissioned? It was just last Friday. Don't ask trick questions. What's the scene where Moshe's commissioned?
The burning bush.
Thank you, George. See, you turn 85 and you know some things.
How did I remember that?
I know everything, George. I know everything. I don't know, because I'm in this.
333.
Chapter 6, verse 2. But it's not going to help you answer my question. So George got the right answer. Moshe is commissioned at the burning bush. Moshe is commissioned at the sneh. Lots of commentary, lots of questions about why a sneh. Like, of all things, why does God appear to Moshe out of a sneh, out of a little thorny, scrappy bush?
It was kind of to see how observant he was.
So to see how observant Moshe was. Would Moshe turn aside to look at the bush that's on fire? We've talked about this lots in years past, right? You're out with your father-in-law's very flammable flock, and something's on fire, and it's the desert. Generally, what do? You run away. You go the other way. Right. So Moshe, of course, turns aside to see, and in turning aside, right, he confronts the divine. And God says, you are going to go take off your shoes, right? The place you're standing on is holy ground, and I need you to go to Pharaoh. I need you to talk to the Israelites, blah, blah, blah. And Moshe's excited, right?
No.
What does Moshe say? Beyond who am I?
I am here.
You picked the wrong guy.
Yeah, I'm not the right one.
I'm not the right one for this. I can't speak. I'm terrible at this. Right? So Moshe from the beginning is chutzpahdik enough to tell, right, God, you made a mistake. Right? It's very Jewish. Very Jewish. So, but one of the things Torah, I think, is telling us is good leadership is generally reluctant leadership. If you want the job really badly, you're probably not the one for the job, right? So Moshe does not want this. Moshe is saying, you messed up, pick somebody else. So Moshe goes and does what he's told eventually, and goes to Pharaoh and demands the release of the Israelites, and Pharaoh's cool with that, right? So what does Pharaoh do? Do we remember?
Hardens his heart.
So, and what does Pharaoh do in that hardening of Pharaoh's heart? Takes the straw from the people and says, you have to make the same amount of brick without material. Clearly, if y'all are agitating about liberation, if y'all are agitating about how hard your lives are, you have some time on your hands. If you're sitting around talking about maybe we could have a different future, then you don't have enough to do. So I'm going to take away material and not lessen your quota of production at all. All right. So when the people hear that, how do they feel about Moshe? Right. So like all oppressed people tend to turn on their leaders, right? It is absolutely part of any kind of study of human nature. When you look at an oppressed people, one of the things they do is that they turn on leadership. And that is certainly what we're going to see here. All right, so that is setting the scene for chapter 6, verse 2, Parshat Vaera.
God spoke to Moses and said to him, I am Adonai. I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai, but I did not make myself known to them by my name, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land in which they lived as sojourners. I have now heard the moaning of the Israelites because the Egyptians are holding them in bondage, and I have remembered my covenant. Say, therefore, to the Israelite people, I am Adonai. I will free you from the labors of the Egyptians and deliver you from their bondage. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and through extraordinary chastisements. And I will make you my people, make you to be my people, and I will be your God. And you shall know that I, Adonai, am your God who freed you from the labors of the Egyptians. I will bring you into the land which I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I will give it to you for a possession. I, Adonai. But when Moses told this to the Israelites, they would not listen to Moses, their spirits crushed by cruel bondage.
All right. So we have Vaydaber Elohim el Moshe, God speaking to Moshe, saying what? Saying, Vayomer elav ani, I am what? Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. All right. So I am Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. I appeared to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov as El Shaddai. But I did not make myself known to them by my name, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh.
Why did you write that from left to right instead of right to left?
Why did I write it left to right? Because English is written left to right.
Well, you're writing it in English.
That's English. Did I miss something? That is English, right? Okay, just checking. Sometimes, people, sometimes.
Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. So, right to left is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Left to right, an approximation in English letters about what you might get. But actually, this probably should be a W. This is how it's written when you're looking at ancient languages, and we're going to look at that a little bit today. I am Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. But your ancestors only knew me as El Shaddai. They did not know me as Yud He Vav He.
Is
All
that
right.
the shin we have on our window?
That the shin that we have in the window and on a mezuzah, that shin is for Shaddai, right? El Shaddai, probably a very old name, a very old Semitic name for God. What we're being told in Torah right now is that this is Mushite. This name is Mushite. This is coming from Moshe. That this name is unknown in Israel before Moshe. That would suggest that this is a new name for God. That earlier generations knew God as El Shaddai. Who is El? Let's remind ourselves, who's El?
The big God of
The big God of
out of all the other cultures.
right? El is the chief god of the pantheon of the Canaanites. So if you have this new religion in town and you're converting Canaanites to your religion, you'd better call the deity something familiar to them, right? So they would have been familiar with this name, El, as they are becoming Israelite. As the Canaanites are converted to the Israelite religion, one of the names for God is the name that they are familiar with, their chief god of their pantheon, El. All right. So El Shaddai, there's lots of this pairing of divine names. El Elyon, have you heard that one? All right, El Elyon, also probably a very old name for the divine. We see cognates of these names in Ugaritic and in other early languages that are parent languages to Hebrew. El Elyon, things like El Shaddai, this compound name, we see it a lot. We do not see this. We do not see Yud He Vav He. We do not see a cognate of Yud He Vav He anywhere. Possibly a very new name. The thing that we're always concerned with, if we're going to get really nerdy, as you know I tend to, we're going to worry about where is this text from, aren't we? Because if we have a new name for God, we need to know who's introducing that name. When does that name come into usage, right? What's the source of this text? J, E, P, or D? Any guesses? It's a P source. All right. Who's P? Priests. Possibly related to the rise in power of the priestly class. It is the priestly class, likely, that is using this name and that is introducing this name as kind of the primary name of the deity.
Why do you think it comes from?
As opposed to
Very good question, Pam. Where does it come from? Where does it come from? All right. Where is Moshe right now?
Wait, he's still in.
He's in Midian.
Oh, Midianite, yeah.
He's in Midian, right? Who's he hanging out with? Well, presumably, but not as much. Who's he hanging out with? Yitro. Right? Moshe's hanging out with Yitro. Who's Yitro?
Priest.
Ha. He's priest of Midian. Presumably, Yitro has a pretty tight relationship with a deity. Possibly with Yud He Vav He. So if that's the case, Moshe is introduced to this name for the divine through Yitro through Midian, through worship that's already happening in Midian. We're going to see that Yitro, as part of our Exodus story, Aaron and Moshe back off and let Yitro sacrifice. Because it's possible that Yitro knows how to deal with this deity in ways that Moshe is just a novice. Moshe doesn't know.
Did Yitro have other gods besides God?
We don't know. We're not told.
I mean, in theory, you could have just had one.
Correct. So it's possible that Moshe learns not only the name of the deity from Yitro, but learns monolatry from Yitro. Right? What is monolatry?
One God, one name, one God.
There is a God associated with location in the ancient world. Gods are associated with location. Often the location is called the name of the god. Right? The Ammonites, the land of Ammon, right, is named after the chief god, Ammon. Yeah? All right. So this is fairly common. Monolatry is different from monotheism. What's monotheism? Belief in one God. What is monolatry?
The God from that place. The God that is conjoined.
The God of the place.
Monolatry, think of idolatry. What's idolatry?
It's worshiping idols.
Okay. Monolatry, the worship of one God.
Oh.
It doesn't mean there aren't other gods, and it doesn't mean the God of the place.
It just means it's worship.
It means you worship one deity. Shema Yisrael, Yud He Vav He Eloheinu. Yud He Vav He Echad. Listen up, Jew. Yud He Vav He is Eloheinu, is our God. You don't need to worry about the other ones. It is not a statement of monotheism. Shema is not a statement of monotheism. It's a statement of monolatry. You, Jew, have a relationship with this deity exclusively. Right? And if you stray from the worship of this God and start hanging out with Baal, if I see a Christmas tree in your living room, what is this God entitled to?
Kill you.
Kill you? Really? Okay. This God is yes, but this God is entitled to kin'ah. Kin'ah, in Hebrew, kuf nun aleph. Kin'ah, often translated when we get to the 10 Commandments, right? You shall have no other gods before me. I am Elkanah. I am a what God? Jealous God. Okay. So, jealous, it's a later term. It's a later translation of kin'ah. Kin'ah is what I am entitled to if you owe your exclusive loyalty to me. If you owe your exclusive loyalty to me and you step out with somebody else, I am entitled to kin'ah. It's not an emotion. It's
retribution.
It's a positioning, right? It's that I now experience something that is only for the person who is owed exclusive loyalty.
Like the king.
Like the king. Right? This is about relationship, and it's not an equal partnership, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Only the person who is owed exclusive loyalty is entitled to kin'ah, not you. Right? It's not a feeling that if I pay too much attention to Lisa, Pam can experience kin'ah. That is not what it is. It is only for the person who is owed exclusive loyalty. Yeah? All right. So Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh describes itself as Elkanah. I am entitled to Kin'ah when it comes to you Israelites. So don't be, I see if you go over there to that Baal station. I see you with your little Asherah, Reuben. I see you with your Asherah in the corner. Don't think I don't know. I am entitled to Kin'ah if you Israelites start any of that monkey business. All right. So this is possibly a new name. So part of the question is, where does it come from? What does it mean? So certainly we have in Torah preserved one meaning. It was last week. Y'all probably didn't read it. I don't know. But Moshe says, who shall I say sent me? Right? When I go to the Israelites, who am I supposed to say sent me? What does God answer?
I will be what I will be.
Ehyeh asher ehyeh. Tell them Ehyeh sent you. All right. So how does that story, how the elephant got its trunk, how does that story explain this name? Tell them Ehyeh sent you. Ehyeh asher ehyeh. How does that explain this name for God? Come on.
Was, is, and will be.
Very good.
In Hebrew.
Right. So it has to do with the Hebrew shoresh, the Hebrew root. According to that argument, hava, to be, or to become. Actually, to become is more accurate. All right. So if it's from hava, and that is preserved in that part of the story, Ehyeh asher ehyeh, I will be what I will be. Tell them Ehyeh sent you. Has something to do with this shoresh, this root of being or becoming. All right. Some of us are super square, super nerds, and I spent like 4 hours researching Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. Nobody buys that story. No scholar I looked at buys that story. They see it as a later gloss, a later etymology, retroactively looking at this name and attaching it to the verb to be or to become. There was like one scholar who bought something about becoming, but it's more like to befall, blah, blah, blah. But because you have to torture this root to get this form. You have to mangle Hebrew to get this. And in general, they say mangling is generally not how language evolves, right? Like, if you have to really torture these letters using Hebrew grammar to get anything close to this, it just kind of grinds. It's not natural. It doesn't fit. Why would you do that? Right? Why would that name have evolved if you really have to torture this shoresh, this root? So we're going to look at an alternative explanation. So take a packet, a whole packet, people. Oh wait, this goes on the back. Okay. I think I need one. Thank you.
So we're going deep into Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh now?
It's enough for me to accept it.
Yes, Jody, I understand. This is why you are not called a nerd.
This is nerd heaven.
This is nerd heaven, people. I am nerding out with you.
And we're great.
The article that you're getting is from, and I know Pam is down with it, so at least I have one person in the room who's excited about this. The article that you're getting is from Professor Israel Knoll, I made 30 copies, so there should be plenty. Israel Knoll, a biblical scholar, he is part of the Hartman faculty. So I've learned with Professor Knoll. He's brilliant. I mean, absolutely scary what this guy knows. God reveals God's name to Moses as I am, from the Hebrew root He Vav Yud, being. The name Yud He Vav He, however, originates in Midian, and he argues derives from the Arabic term. Okay, right? You ready? For the Arabic term love, desire, or passion. Here we have the quote from Exodus 6:2, right? God speaks to Moshe, I am Yud He Vav He. I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai. I did not make myself known to them by my name, Yud He Vav He. The text makes it clear that the name Yud He Vav He, known in scholarship as the Tetragrammaton, is of great significance, marking a new era in ancient Israelite history, but it offers no explanation for its meaning. Right? That's in last week's reading. Here, where the name is revealed, there is nothing explaining what the meaning of this name is. Nothing.
Two simple questions. What does Shaddai mean and El Shaddai? And the second is, I thought that in Hebrew there was no verb to be.
What was that? He just ended his question with. Oh my gosh. Okay, so there is a verb to be in Hebrew. Haya. Haya, hoveh, yihiyeh. Hu yihiyeh. He will be. There is a verb for to be. You don't have to use it to say there is a book. You can say yesh sefer, right? Or hasefer al hashulchan. The book is on the table. You don't have to say is, right? But I can say the book will be thrown.
Next time.
If, right? So, right, there is a verb, right? That says will be. It actually isn't will be thrown. But it will be blue tomorrow. Yeh, kachol, machar. It will be blue tomorrow. But you don't have to use it in every sentence. So there is a verb for to be. What is El Shaddai? A very good question. If you want, you can borrow my book. Any of you are welcome to. And there's an entire excursus in the back of my book on El Shaddai. Excursus 4. Right, so Shaddai, we're not sure. There you go. There's my answer. I'm pretty safe usually with that answer. There's a debate among scholars, and we're not sure. The suggestions range from the cognate sadeh, like field or plain, the god of the plain, to Shada SDH, which in related languages means mountain, which makes, in some case, more sense. The god of the mountain. That's who this is, right? This is the god of the mountain. And we're going to come to the mountain. When the people are redeemed, where are they going to come? They're going to come meet this God at the mountain, right? All right. So that's one explanation. Arthur Waskow prefers the one that talks about Shaddayim, breasts. El Shaddai, the breasted one, which would take us all the way back probably to the image of a mother goddess, right? You know, the statues of the goddess, she has the big belly and the full breast because that's how you are fed, and fertility and the crops and the rain and the good stuff, right, is represented by the full breast. So I like that one, but it's up to you.
It's amazing with all the cultures and languages infused into this wandering group of people that there aren't more words that we just don't know where they came from.
There's a lot of them that we don't know where they came from.
I'm amazed that we get to any of them with distinct definition.
Right. Well, some of it's preserved, right? The meaning is preserved because the texts continue to be studied. It never got lost.
Right, but a lot of it did get lost.
Yes, before the canonization, for sure.
Right.
For sure. But what I'm saying is, you know, if you're studying this continually, the words tend to not get lost. Right. The meaning of the words.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it was like these texts were shunted away somewhere for thousands of years and then we discovered them, right? They were continually used and studied, so the meaning of those words didn't go away.
Even if you look at the English language with all the infusion of every other language that's fed into it, someday in the future, people will be saying, what did that word come from? Where did it come from? Because we have Chinese and Japanese and Spanish and French and everything infused into our language.
Well, so remember, Hebrew was protected from some of that. Hebrew was protected.
By
Why?
The tribal structure?
Huh? It was gone. It wasn't used. It was studied, but it wasn't spoken. So it didn't evolve the same way, right? That's right. So for 2,000 years, the language did not have the influence of other languages working on it the same way a living spoken language does.
It was only the written
Correct.
Torah.
So they would have, but like Rambam, people were writing in Hebrew, so Hebrew did continue to evolve. Rabbinic Hebrew is different than biblical Hebrew. Medieval Hebrew is different than Rabbinic Hebrew. So it evolves, but not nearly at the pace of a language that's being spoken.
And spoken Hebrew is evolving very
Absolutely.
rapidly as well.
Absolutely. Okay. So, assuming the area described by Ptolemy as Midiana is the same area as biblical Midian, an assumption that can be supported by the biblical connection between Midian and Ishmael, we can know quite a bit about its material culture in the late Bronze and early Iron Ages. That's our period. The late Bronze, early Iron Age, that's our time that we're dealing with. A group of semi-nomads who produced a very distinct, colorful, and attractive decorated pottery with images of ostriches and other birds lived a little northeast of the area Ptolemy calls Midian, in an area known as the Oasis of Kuraya. This pottery style is known in scholarship as Kuraya painted ware. The Kuraya people were also experts in metallurgy, specifically the smelting of copper and the production of bronze. The area of Kuraya itself has no copper veins, so they weren't mining copper, but such veins are found further south in the Arabian Peninsula. And the copper ore was sent north to Kuraya for smelting because the people of Kuraya, Midianites, were experts in metalwork. Evidence of this culture's fingerprints is found in other places, right? Specifically the sites of Fainan and Timnah in the southern Levant. This is Israel. Uzi Avner, an archaeologist working at the Dead Sea and Arabah Science Center, has argued that the Midianites were brought in as specialists or contractors working with the local nomadic tribes or with Egyptians who had a presence in this area during this period, producing pure copper from ore for their customers. All right. So now he goes on to give us textual from Tanakh, not from the 5 books, but from Tanakh, from Judges. Right? You know that this is called the Pentateuch, but we've talked lots that should be the Hexateuch. Right. So looking into, right, the history as represented by Judges, the Midianites were a Proto-Arabian tribe. You all are with me on the second page, second heading, yes? Okay. They are a Proto-Arabian tribe. Their home base was in Arabia, and they are related to Ishmaelites. So then he gives you these proof texts from Judges that links the Midianites with the Ishmaelites, but we're not going to worry about that. Go to the next page.
The back?
Yes. Oh, sorry. I jumped, didn't I? I apologize. During the Iron Age and afterwards, the Midianites as an Arabian tribe were part of the spice trade, right? So now he's going to show us, again, the connection to the Ishmaelites, but also where these folks are hanging out. Go down to the Shaswe land. Based on Egyptian records dating to the 14th century BCE, we know that the Midianites were not the only ethnic groups living in this area. In the geopolitical list in Amenhotep III's Nubian temple, the people of the Arava and the southern Transjordan were called Shaswe, a generic term meaning something like nomadic tribes, right? So we're looking at Shaswe. We see the hieroglyphics for it. We don't know how to pronounce it because hieroglyphics, like Hebrew, when it was written, did not have vocalization. It was a consonant. Hebrew is a consonantal language. Hieroglyphics also do not have pronunciation. It's not transliteration for the word. It's a visual symbol. It is not a transliteration. Same with Hebrew. Hebrew's not a transliteration because we don't have any vowels. Okay. Actually, we do have some vowels, don't we? There's a theory there too, by the way. All right. One area listed is called Nomad Land Seir, which is identical with the Mount Seir region in Edom. We know this, yes? We know about Edom, don't we? Mm-hmm. Right? Who's Edom?
No, it's
That's Adam. Who's Edom?
Edomites.
The red guy.
Esau.
Thank you. Esav is Edom, right? Clearly a story that preserves the kinship between the Hebrews and the Edomites. There are family people. Edom is Esav, Yaakov's twin brother. These stories preserve a relationship between these nomadic tribes that later settle down, right? Okay. So Seir, Edom, the following name in the list and thus nearby or contiguous with Seir was Nomad Land Yehua. Okay, sorry, but that was spoken like a nerd. I am sorry, Jody, to tell you, but that excitement sounded just like a nerd. Okay, so right by Seir is the nomad land called Yehua. The pronunciation of this name is uncertain, since like Hebrew, hieroglyphics do not include vowels, right? All right. So now go to the page that at the bottom says the jealous God. You with me?
Yes.
In the list, Yehua is the name of a land. Just as one nomadic group lived in a land called Seir, another lived in a land called Yehua. But in antiquity, a name could sometimes be both a toponym and a theonym. And we get an example. Assyria illustrates this. It is both the name of Assyria's chief deity and of their ancient capital city. Right? Athens is the same thing. Athena, Athens, right? All right. Now we're going to the Bible again. Biblical evidence suggests that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh comes from the southeast, either from the hills of Edom or even further south in Midian or beyond. He's going to give us 3 proof texts. One, these are very ancient texts. You know, when we start doing this whole JEPD business and we start looking at, how old texts are or aren't, it doesn't matter where they appear in linear, right? It's all a mishmash of old and new texts. These are very old texts, or very early Israelite texts. So we look at the Song of Moses, Deuteronomy 33. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh came from Sinai. He shone upon them from Seir. He appeared from Mount Paran and approached from Rivot Kodesh. All right? So very old poetry describing God coming up from Seir. Looking at the Song of Deborah in the book of Judges, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, when you came forth from Seir, advanced from the country of Edom, the earth trembled. And in the Song of Habakkuk, God is coming from Teman, the Holy One from Mount Paran Selah. Each of these poems opens with the image of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh coming from his home in the south. And Habakkuk's song even goes on to describe how the tents of the Midianites shake as Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh stomps on the ground near them on the way to his people. All right, all of this is textual evidence for the Israelites' understanding that Yud He Vav He comes from down under, comes from the south, right? And these images of God moving up to come to God's people.
Sinai.
South. Let's go to an Arabic name. If Yud He Vav He's origins are in the nomad land of Yehua among the Midianites, then the meaning of the name should be from the Arabic language family rather than the Hebrew language family. This further calls into question the etymology in Exodus 3 of the Tetragrammaton from the verb to be, since unlike Hebrew and Aramaic, Proto-Arabic does not have the root He Vav Yud for the word to be. Okay, we're going to go past Kin'ah, past monolatry, past iconoclasm. No, maybe not. Where do I want to be? No. Where's the impassioned part? Do you see it?
What?
I lost the part about the translation.
Above monolatry, the second
It's up at the top
page.
of
Thank you.
monolatry.
All right, here we go. Sorry, thank you. You know what? I shouldn't have skipped Kin'ah. In 1956, Shlomo Dov Goiten, a scholar of both Jewish and Arabic studies, suggested that the name derives from the Arabic root, and you see it there, the way that it's written for those of us who don't speak these languages. You see it? Should come from the Arabic root HWY. Yeah? And the word Hawaya, which means love, affection, passion, desire. He connected this suggestion with the passage in Exodus 34. And if we look at that, right, for you must not worship any other God. Ki Yud He Vav He Kana Shemo El Kana Hu. All right. You can't worship other gods. Why? Ki Yud He Vav He Kana Shemo. Yud He Vav He Kin'ah is his name. El Kanahu is a god of Kin'ah. So, what does that mean? Yud He Vav He Kana Shemo. Yud He Vav He Kin'ah is his name. Right? The scholar here is linking that explanation to that's why God is called Yud He Vav He, because Kin'ah Shmo. God is, and in this case is translated as impassioned. If you look up Kin'ah, one of the translations for Kin'ah is passion in Hebrew, right? So this is a Hebrew explanation for, right, for Yud He Vav He Kin'ah Shemo. God's name is passion. What does this do to our understanding of this name? We just assume always it's about being. Is, was, will be, existence, capital E, right? And we meditate a lot on that in terms of this is how we identify the divine. How we relate to the divine is it is about existence. It's about isness, wasness, always will be, something that is beyond time, beyond like our moment, something much bigger than that. What if it comes from Arabic
Passion.
for passion?
That's a quality, not a time.
What does that do?
It changes God to be a personal affect.
It's a very different meaning.
A very different meaning. What changes? What shifts? I mean, for y'all. I mean, hopefully I just blew your mind a little bit, right? So what would that mean?
It's emotional.
God loves you.
God loves you.
Well, it layers the concept because it unites the concept of God was, is, and will be, to in addition to which there is a passionate connection that God has with his people man. And that creates the beginning of our covenantal relationship then.
So passion suggests something about relationship. Mm-hmm. Existence doesn't do that, does it? At all. I mean, are we related to that concept? Of course. Is there some part of me that still loves that interpretation? Of course. But God as the impassioned one, that starts to be a whole nother, right, kind of understanding of the divine, and it certainly suggests something about relationship. Pam?
The passion, to me, suggests that this entity might love very quickly, but could also be quick to anger.
That
sounds a lot like our God.
That sounds a lot like the God in Torah, because if I feel passionately as regards you, that cuts both ways, doesn't it? It absolutely cuts both ways. That's a good thing, because I'm passionately interested in a relationship with you. I love you. I want to be with you and close with you and intimate with you. And if you screw that up, what is that passion going to feel like? Anger. Right? It's going to be anger. It's going to be hurt. It's going to be God takes the universe and goes, right?
So when we have that prayer where you shall love the Lord thy God and with all your might, it's similar to me, because this is a passionate God. So I feel, I'm looking at that prayer for the first time. With all your might seems equal.
All right. First of all, I hate that translation.
Oh, okay.
So, but it's okay. It's going to help your interpretation, actually. What is the word used there in the Vaera? You shall love God with all of your heart, with all of your, and I hate the translation soul. I hate that. And with all your what? In Hebrew. Uvechol me'odecha.
Yes.
Uvechol me'odecha. Me'od. What does me'od mean in Hebrew? Much. Very. Good. Garb. You shall love God with all your muchness. With all your muchness. With all that you are. Right? So it supports your reading even more. Yeah. That if God is the impassioned one who loves you, and is interested with excitement in you,
all of you.
You are to respond to that by loving God with all of your ma'odness. Dana?
And this is what Moses is trying to understand from his father, so he can communicate it to him.
Lovely. Moshe is learning about this from Yitro. Moshe's being exposed to an idea of a God that is about passionate love and intimate relationship. Possibly a new idea. A very new idea. A very new way of thinking about relationship. And it 100% sets up the covenant. This is the God who they're going to come to only once they're free. Only once they're free. And they're going to come to the mountain where this God is. And what is God going to do with them at that mountain? What is the signature move of this Yod-Heh Vav-Heh? The covenant. Making a covenantal relationship that exists past that generation and is in existence to this day. That's the move that this God is going to make, which makes complete sense. If God is the passionate, the impassioned, well, of course, what's God going to want to do with the people when they get to the mountain? Marry them. God wants to marry them. They sign the ketubah. That's what the covenant is. Right? Either we describe it as a marriage, or we describe it, which is the one I love a lot, as an adoption. God adopts the people as his people through a covenant, through a relationship.
This reminds me of a wedding I was at in Israel of one of my granddaughters. The husband's family has a branch that survived the Holocaust and became Hasidim. They came to the wedding with their own space, their own food, and their own dancing. And that was like this relationship to God that was emotional.
Right. That you could see their understanding of that as a passionate, excited relationship. If you watch Hasidim dance, there is no doubt, right? Yeah. It's ecstatic. Their dance is ecstatic. At a simcha. Right. Who goes? Right. All right, so I'm not leaving you. Let's look. What's happening here?
Back to text.
We're going to go back to the text, believe it or not. God continues. My name, Yud He Vav He, right? I also established what? My covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan. So God's relationship begins in covenant, even before Sinai. God is in relationship, right? God has made promises about relationship even before Sinai. Say therefore to the Israelite people, blah, 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 I will free you from the labors of the Egyptians and deliver you from their bondage. You hear it? I will redeem you with an outstretched arm. Right here begins the literary device, right, of God with the strong hand and the outstretched arm that we are all used to from the Maxwell House Haggadah. Yes? And this one's like, what are you talking about? The They're like, what are you talking about, right? So those of us who grew up on the Maxwell House Haggadah, right, with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. All right. I will take you to be your people, and I will be your God. This is relationship language. This is love language. I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God. Yes? Mm-hmm. You shall know, right, that I am God. And so in all of these promises, by the way, there are 4 ways that it's expressed here, and each one of those represents one of the 4 cups of wine. So where it comes from. Right here. Right? Now, what happens? When Moshe says this to the Israelites, I know this is shocking, they would not listen. I know. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? The Jews didn't listen. Something new and different. Because why? From what? It's verse 9, the end of that verse in Hebrew. V'lo shama'u el Moshe. And they didn't listen to Moshe. From what? Mikotzer ruach. What is katzar? Short. Katzar, from kotzer ruach. What's ruach? Spirit. Breath. All right? Do you see why the translation doesn't even come close? They can't hear Moshe. Why? From kotzer ruach. From a shortness of spirit. From a shortness of breath. When are we short of breath? When we're anxious, when we're scared, right? And when we can't, when we draw short breaths like that, right? Breathing like that actually makes it more difficult to take a deep breath, right? So they are so anxious, they are so fearful, they are so blunted that they can't hear words of redemption. They cannot hear about hope. They cannot hear about an alternate future. They can't hear it. They can't hear him. Right? And remember in Hebrew, Listening and hearing are the same word. They can't listen. They can't hear. Right? It's the same word in Hebrew. So God speaks to Moshe and says, go and tell Pharaoh, right? Let my people go, essentially. What does Moshe say? Verse 12.
They won't listen to me.
The Israelites wouldn't listen to me. Why should Pharaoh listen to me? If the Israelites won't listen to me, who have an interest in listening to what I have to say, you, God, think Pharaoh's going to listen to me? Who doesn't want these people to go? Are you kidding me right now? And I don't like that the English then links this in this way. How then should Pharaoh heed me, a man of impeded speech? No. They didn't listen to me. What makes you think, God, that Pharaoh's going to listen to me? It's another statement that comes next. Va'ani oral sfatayim. I am of foreskinned lips. Now, why do I make such a big deal out of not linking? Why would Pharaoh listen to me since I don't want that linkage. I want it broken. The Israelites wouldn't listen to me. What makes you think Pharaoh's going to listen to me? I am of foreskinned lips. Aviva Zorenberg is going to go with an ancient commentary from the Sfat Emet. And the Sfat Emet says, this is causative. This is prescriptive, not descriptive. Moshe is saying, according to the Sfat Emet, they aren't listening, therefore, I am of foreskinned lips.
Oh.
Because they can't hear the prophet can't speak. If you're prophesying and they're not listening, what does that do to you as the prophet?
Yeah.
It closes your mouth. So we have no idea that he has a problem. Moshe self-identifies, and here is saying, I am of orla, of foreskin, related to his mouth. What is the cure for that? Circumcision. What is circumcision a sign of?
The covenant.
The covenant. The impassioned God, the one who makes the covenant, that's what circumcises the foreskin. That's what cuts away the thickening that prevents speech. That's what cuts through the impediment to the words of redemption being received. The loving, impassioned God of relationship, that is the answer. The brit, the covenant, cutting the covenant, that is the answer to the inability to receive the message of redemption. Yes.
So God speaks the world into existence, and Moses is then able to speak the people into covenant with God.
And Aaron, the priest is there. I mean, the priest wrote this, and they solidified Aaron's role.
Right? So we know something about speech. We know about speech's ability to create. God is saying to Moshe, use your speech, prophet, and go tell them about my redemption. But what happens? Because of kotzer ruach, they cannot hear. Their kotzer ruach, their shortness of spirit, doesn't enable them to hear anything about redemption. And that causes Moshe to describe himself as being orlat sfatayim, as being of foreskinned lips. It will take a lot more speech, a lot more stuff. 10 plagues. It's going to take a lot before this people is ready to stand at Sinai and say and speak, Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do it, and then we will hear about it. It's going to take a whole lot more for this Kotzer Ruach people, this Am Kshe Oref, this stiff-necked people, to be able to hear and say, Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do it, and then we will listen. We will listen, and we will hear. That is the journey that we begin this morning and get to the end of a long, long time from now. I gave you Aviva Zornberg. It's a beautiful piece by her. And for her, this God of relationship, this impassioned God, this God who longs and yearns to deliver this people and be for them a God, have them be God's people. God wants this so much. And Moshe, the Israelites, and Pharaoh all are like, no thanks. Right? God is working really hard to make Geulah happen, to make redemption happen. And all the players that God is trying to be in relationship with are like, can't do it. People can't hear. Moshe can't speak. Pharaoh doesn't want any part of it. All the human characters in the story are essentially blocking, right, God's attempts to redeem this people. And we're going to see that continue, right? And so for me, I will close with this Shabbat. May we figure out ways and be about the kinds of things that enable us to hear, that enable us to believe that it can be different, that enable us to have true, real hope, that there is Geulah, there is redemption, and it's possible. But we have to deal with our Kotzer Ruach. We have to deal with our fear. We have to deal with our stress. We have to deal with all the crazy that we get all caught up in, or we won't be able to hear, and we won't be able to take any of the steps that are necessary for us to leave Mitzrayim, to leave the place of the narrow stuckness of Egypt. Shabbat Shalom.
You've been listening to Rabbi Amy Bernstein's Friday morning Torah study from Kehillat Israel in Pacific Palisades, California. For more information, go to our website, www.ourki.org.